tell me that the Marines find just one little body part left over from the original crew, a toe with a tag wrapped around it. just the toe, nothing else.
That would be absolutely hilarious. Maybe that's something I need to put in another series. Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 475 of the Dead Robot Society. Paulie Cooley here, joining me today, as always, Mr. Terry. I'm completely rebuilding my house because I have so much freaking money, Terry Mixon.
Howdy ho, neighbor.
Howdy ho, neighbor. What are you, Flanders now?
Yes.
Ned Flanders or Ed Flanders?
Ned Flanders.
This is where I do my Dr. Evil. Not a very good Dr. Evil.
Not very good at all. No.
No. So how the hell are you, man? What have you been up to besides trying to write around, all roofers, construction people, just completely beating the crap out of your house?
I gave up on trying to work during that week.
You're such a slacker.
Too chaotic.
Too chaotic?
It was. It was too chaotic, too stressful.
So what did you do? You just sat around and watched them destroy your house?
I sat around and I consoled the cats with my presence. And I read. I should have listened to the damn audiobook, but I thought I'd have time.
So much slacking.
Yes.
So much slacking.
I am like the epic king of slack.
So what are you going to try to accomplish this week now that you don't have all that racket?
Oh, that's just the first project of 5.
Yes, I know.
They've still got to come in. Now that they've got the roof done, a different group of people is going to come in and fix the walls downstairs that were damaged in the hurricane. They're going to do some electrical work. Then I've got to have the AC duct people come out to replace the AC ducting, which is not hurricane related, but really needs to be done. Outside, I've got to have somebody install the gutters, and I've got to have somebody replace all the flooring downstairs. Wow. That's going to happen both this month, and probably the flooring will be next month.
So it sounds to me like you need to leave the house for a little while and go find a quiet place to write, or a nice little corner booth at IHOP where you pay for 1 cup of coffee and sit there for 2 hours.
I think that now that the roofing is done beating over my head, I think I can get some stuff done next week. My goal it may not happen before we actually get to the next show recording, but in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to get Raid on Terra done. It's got to get finished.
Yeah, it's got to get finished. Yeah, I know that feeling. Finished. I know that feeling all too well.
And you're going to hear it first here, folks, but it's going to be longer getting to you than even my own slacking could arrange for, because I've decided that since it's so late in the year already when I'm going to finish this, that I'm going to go ahead and switch over with this book to using a copy editor rather than the beta team. So my first reader will get the book for 3 weeks to make plot and character commentary to me, the story commentary, and then it's going off to a copy editor rather than the beta team. So it's going to be a longer process. But with doing it with this first book, once that gap is done, while it's off doing its thing, I'll be writing the next book. So the gap should not be noticeable after this one book, but it now is going to push back Raid on Terra till probably early February for release.
You going with Red Adept again?
I am.
Okay.
I sent them all the rest of my back catalog to get proofread, so that's been another little pricey expense, but at least it's done now. I think they have 5 novels in the pile and a bunch of short stories still to do.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, you've definitely got a backlog there.
Hey, that means that half of them have been proofread.
Yay!
Yay!
Lucky you. Lucky you. I am still trying to get Garrett's Inferno done now that we have a cover. Did I send you that cover?
I did. I saw it.
Okay.
You sent it to me and said, "Hey, where'd this quote come from?"
Yeah, pretty much. That's right.
I don't know. Maybe you made it up.
I've got the cover for Garrett's Inferno done. We've got the back cover copy more or less put together. Scotty's working on putting all that together. But now In order for him to finish his work, I have to get the thing laid out for print so we know how many pages it is, so we can design the spine properly. Have to get the barcodes done, have to get the ISBN done, have to get all of that done, and the ebook done. And I haven't finished recording yet.
You're doomed.
So I'm screwed. Big and bad. So now I have to make a decision if I'm going to, in order to get this thing out for Christmas, whether I'm going to be dumb enough to basically stop sleeping for the next 6 days and hope my voice stays together and then I don't get sick and try and record the rest of the audiobook, preferably at nighttime. Or do I just say F it and go back and do the edits on the ebook, the final edits, and then lay everything out and then wait till after I get all that published before I start recording or finish recording? And I don't
vote
like
for option B.
Do what now?
I vote for option B.
Vote for option B.
Get the moneymaker out the door, man.
Yeah, it just sucks. It just sucks. And the other problem I've got now is that I've only got, I think, 8 weeks before Tomb runs out of episodes. And I don't think Destruction's going to be ready by then. You're so screwed. So I may have to start podcasting Gears Inferno, which I had not planned on doing. I had planned on doing that as a Patreon exclusive, but I may have to revisit that because I just don't have the episodes ready to go for Derelict Destruction, which is pissing me off. But it is what it is. You suffer for, the delays that you make. In this case, some of it was medication and other things like that. So it is what it is. I'm fucked. I just need to make the best of it now and see how fast I can get everything done. Because even if it finished Destruction next week, even if that happened, it would take another week for me to go through, or at least 3 or 4 days to go through, make plot changes and everything else before I send it off to beta readers. And then that would take 2 to 3 weeks to get back for beta readers. And then it would have to go to Sever Press. And then I would have to start recording. So that does not leave a whole lot of time. It just doesn't. So
you're going to have to bite the bullet, and probably Gears Inferno is going to be your go-to on that.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be. I think it's just, Destruction's just going to have to wait. And then, of course, I'm going to have to decide what I'm going to write next after that, because I know what I want to do. It's just a question of what's going to make financial sense. So it's kind of a mess. Anyway.
Don't you have a black book to finish?
I do have a black book to finish, but that's another can of worms that we can talk about offline.
Oh, no. Not the kind of thing I want to hear.
Yeah, I've said this before. I have 4 works in progress right now in various stages of completion, and it's just a matter of, I think, what's speaking to me and what I need to do, and I have some decisions to make about the Soul and Beyond series. So we'll discuss that later, maybe.
Well, before we cut off to the episode, I also have to announce that Behind Enemy Lines, the audiobook version, is live.
Woohoo!
Once again, Veronica Jaguar has done a fabulous job.
I'm sure she did an awful job. I'm sure she did a terrible job.
You are such a Debbie Downer.
More hate mail from V. I love it.
You're totally screwed, don't you?
What do you mean? Because
in one of the future books, your character is going to be there, and she's just going to give you the most awful voice possible.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Hello, my name is Commander Paul Curley.
Well, you haven't heard any of the Derelict stuff. You should hear what I did to David Hayes. He is just, it's terrible. It's awful.
Well, before we drug too far down that thing there, the book is live on all 3 audio platforms, so go check it out and give Veronica a listen. And that actually means that Empire of Bones is caught up in audio. Now I have one more proof to get back for the print version, and may actually get those submitted and live by Christmas. Maybe. It'll be close.
It'll be close.
It'll be close.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen by Christmas, it'll certainly happen within a week or 2 after that. It'll be close. Okay. So then I can go, Yay! All of that is loose in the wild.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Or something.
Or something.
Oh boy.
That's if the repairs in this house for the next month and a half don't kill me first.
Yeah, I hear you. Been through it way too many times, so I understand completely. Well, Terry, we made the mistake of talking about this, and then we ended up making an episode out of it. And really what it comes down to is we are bastards.
Well, you know what that calls for? It calls for us saying we're going to do the lead into the episode, and then listeners are going to be listening, and then it's just going to end. There'll be nothing left. We're not actually going to put an episode at the end of this intro. It's just going to be the intro.
You mean like, Terry, I have a shirt.
Thank God for that.
And I'm not wearing it at the moment, but it says founding member of the Cliff-Hangerin Bastards Club.
I've been called a Cliff-Hangerin bastard before. So yeah, I think I'm a member of the same organization.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly? What does it mean to be a Cliff-Hangerin bastard?
It means you lead the reader on along until you get to a really good spot where you've got their attention completely riveted, and then you end the chapter.
Okay, that's with a chapter. Now, with chapters, totally cool. If you're writing suspense thrillers, if you're trying to write an action, you're trying to get all that stuff done. You know, we talked several times about when I keep going back to this anyway. The Jim Butcher rules episode. If you have not listened to that, you should go take a look at it. But it's where he describes scenes and sequels. And both Terry and I think are very interested in the scene part and then adding the sequel. And that basically means here's a chapter of action. And then the next chapter has the what the hell just happened, you know, between the characters once they're out of that action scene or out of peril. Or they may still be in peril, but they're at a rest stop, so to speak. Bathroom break, smoke break, having a drink, whatever, before all hell breaks loose again. And sometimes it's good because it allows them to plan what their next stupid action is going to be that's going to, you know, put them in peril.
Or scurry around in a blind panic.
Right, screwing around with a blind panic. So with a book where you have a lot of different characters, like your Empire of Bones series, like Derelict or even The Black, we've got characters separated from one another, each dealing with whatever it is they're dealing with. What I like to do is I like to have a chapter, an action, an actual scene, if we use Jim Butcher's parlance, with one set of characters, and then I'll have a sequel to the previous scene with the other set of characters. And so what happens is the reader's stumbling along through this action scene, we cut, and then we move to this other thing, which is the characters that were in the chapter before that one.
And I do that all the time too.
Right. So it gives the reader a chance to breathe, and it also makes them hate you.
Yeah,
because they have to read this sequel in order to get to the next scene that should, you know, somehow tie all this shit up.
They're like flipping the page. What the hell? What? What
do you mean I gotta read another 50 pages to find out what the hell happened here?
Oh, bullshit, I'm reading ahead.
And I know people who do that, actually. Yeah, exactly.
There's been a few books where I've done that too, where I said, you know, I'm going ahead because I just want to know what happens next here. I can come back and catch up with what's going on in these other scenes, but I've got to know what happens here now.
I don't care about these other meat sticks. I'm interested in these people over here.
Of course, some people do their cliffhanging right there in the very beginning of a story, where you start off a thing by saying the building was on fire and it wasn't my fault.
Yeah, okay. That would be good old. That sounds like Harry to me.
That is indeed Harry. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're starting. This isn't starting in the middle of things. This is starting way in the middle of things.
Well, that goes back to the old rule, in laid out early, right? So in other words, you start in the middle of the action rather than at the very beginning of the action. And then you have a chance to basically start piecing together what happened at the beginning. And that can be a very, very effective thing. And then getting out before everything's resolved, which is kind of what we're talking about. So, but let's extrapolate from this. Okay. Now we're talking about Cliff-Hangerin bastards between scenes and sequels. What about books?
I've seen people do that, and their name is Paul Cooley. I try to wrap mine up a little bit better than, having an Empire Strikes Back cliffhanger in the middle of my story arc for multiple novels.
I have no idea what you're talking about. But I've been accused of being a Cliff-Hangerin master for a very long time. Very, very long time. Closet Treats ended in such a way that one of my readers said I gave her the blue balls because I never really went into resolving what happened to the characters that were affected. We just kind of saw where they ended up, but I didn't like skip ahead 2 years to tell you, if Trey comes out of his coma, what happens to Alan. Never dealt with any of that. And so everybody's screaming for a sequel because they want to know exactly what happened to those folks. So I got accused of being Cliff-Hangerin bastard there. I got accused of being Cliff-Hangerin bastard with the Black, all 3 books, because of the way I ended each one of them. And that was all to set up book 4, which is fine. I haven't written it yet. And I get hate mail on a regular basis that I haven't written book 4 yet. So I'm a Cliff-Hangerin bastard for that one as well. Then Derelict comes along, and then yes, that was the ultimate Cliff-Hangerin son of a bitch.
You are just mean to your people.
I am mean to my readers, and of course, this all comes from my wonderful podcasting habits that I picked up from Scott Sigler, which is always ended so that people are like, "God damn it, I can't wait till the next episode." I just
you know what that's for, don't you? That's because that's a staple of serialized fiction.
Correct.
When you're doing things like they did back on Podiobooks and you've got distinct episodes, it pays to go ahead and do the episodic thing and be the Cliff-Hangerin bastard to where at the end of every episode, you make them really Jones for the next one, because that's how you get them to come back.
That's also how you get them to go buy the audiobook.
Oh, I am not freaking waiting 52 weeks for this bullshit. Fuck that.
That is correct. That is correct. I mean, at the beginning of Tomb, I was like, hey, you can listen to all 3. You can wait for all 33 episodes to be out, or you can go buy the audiobook. And people are like, 33 weeks? I got to wait 33 weeks before finding out how this goddamn book ends? Fuck you. I'll go buy the audiobook.
That's total bullshit. I'm not going to do that. That's bullshit.
It's bullshit. I'm not waiting that long. So in that case, the Cliff-Hangerin bastard works out really well. And like you said, with the episodic serial stuff. So are there any books that you have written that basically have just cut off at the end without really resolving any major points?
Well, all of my books leave some things that are undistinct, and some of them are major. But I give enough closure so that there's a level of satisfaction in the reader that a bunch of things have closed out. There are larger story arcs, sometimes really important ones, that are unresolved. And that's where mine and yours different. You just leave them hanging in the wind, literally hanging from a cliff.
Yeah, pretty much. I won't be doing it again like this, though. Derelict, I've learned my lesson. I'm not doing that again. But when we think about this, you basically have, if you think about the series that you love, you go and look at a season, and we've talked about this before too. You've got one huge arc, and then that arc is made up of sub arcs. And so if you've got a Babylon 5 where Michael J. Straczynski knew it was only going to be 5 seasons, then he set up a humongous arc starting in season 2. And it doesn't really get resolved until the end of season 4. That entire arc is made up of all these little sub arcs of different episodes, different seasons to finish that entire massive story that he was telling. Mm-hmm. and it works really well in TV. It works pretty damn well in books as well, if it's done right. I don't do it right. Haven't anyway. But obviously in Empire of Bones, you have your books are essentially standalones. They're
To a
all
degree, I'm going to disagree about that. They're not standalones simply because so much of the background events have shifted that if you pick up one of the later books, you might be a little lost about things that have occurred in the important things that have occurred in the previous books.
How do you deal with that?
I usually stumble my way through it and then remember 3 books down the line that I changed a name somewhere and get totally hosed over. No, to answer the question seriously, is I have a document that has a list of plot threads and plot ideas that have been generated in the previous books, and they're open. They're things that I can come back to the well and revisit.
Right. And
I often do. Although with every book I write, there are more that I will not possibly be able to cover.
Okay. What do you worry about somebody picking up book 5 in an 8-book series and being completely lost?
I've had that happen to an audio listener that got a free copy of the later books. And some of the events were confusing to the listener, and they had to go back and get the previous books. Oh, that's just the way it is.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's just the way it is.
So what I've done in Derelict, and this is the only time I've really had to do this, was basically the first couple of pages are to remind everybody where we are. And so I will go into a little bit of detail about, what happened in the last book or what happened in the book before that, and try and do it very subtly. I mean, you don't want to. I don't want to get to the point where I have an entire 5 pages going previously on Derelict, kind of deal where and catch you up and everything. So in case you've forgotten what happened in book 1 and 2,
previously on Paul's Agents of Asshole.
Agents of Asshole. Does that go back to Intergalactic Star Slut? Does that go back to that?
No, that goes back to the thread I have on Facebook that will not die, where movie, books, television, people are replacing one word in the title with asshole.
Oh, yeah. I saw that. Assholes children. Anyway, it reminds me of that Comedy Central or Adult Swim show, Assy McGee, whatever it was that was on there.
Somebody said that my titles would either make, awesome stories on their own right or be gay porn.
I think that says more about you than anything else. I don't know.
I said I could write that story.
Yes, you probably can. So why don't you, if you had a large story like that, why wouldn't you cut it up if it was going to be like a 300,000 word story?
Because I'm an episodic kind of guy. I don't write story arcs that really cover that kind of space in as much detail. I don't write a war that you have to have that long. My attention span's too short for that. Somewhere between 75 and 85,000 words is where my novels usually fall, because that's what I grew up with, shorter novels than that and stuff along those lines. And that's how my brain puts story arcs together.
We've had several questions in the Facebook group about length of books. And at one point I worried that Destruction was only going to be 60 or 70,000 words, because it was like, the first one was 82, the second one was 102 or 105. I don't remember. Was it 108? No, Garrus Inferno is 108. And I worried that, having the third book that thin was going to bring some outrage. But once I started writing, I realized there's no way I can tie all this shit up in 60,000 words. It's not really a problem.
Even with the way that I write being about the length I am always off by what I figure the novel is going to be. I say, this is going to be an 80,000 word novel. It's going to actually end up being an 85 to 90,000 word novel by the time I'm all said and done. I usually end up going 5,000 words over because I just can't judge where the ending is.
Yeah. It gets difficult. It gets difficult to figure that out. And
I think it's going to wrap up sooner than it does, is what happens. And then at the last minute, I introduce more problems.
Yeah, because you can't help yourself. Yeah, you've got an issue there. I think my experience with Derelict and the way I did it has been very eye-opening in several ways, because there are many people who love the fact that it's done that way, and there are others who absolutely hate me. And some who have said they're never going to read anything I write again because it was all a marketing ploy. It's like, no, bitch, I'm trying to get paid. I'm going to make the same money from Sever Press if I write a 300,000 word novel as opposed to writing 100,000 words novels.
Readers, if you're getting something novel length that's part of an overall story that's broken up into chunks, don't hold it against the author. If you're getting 70, 80,000, 90,000 words in that piece, you're not being robbed.
Especially if you're only paying $3.99 for it.
Exactly so. You're not being robbed. Just accept that some stories take longer to tell, and you're going to have to buy a couple of books instead of one big old doorstop, because Paul is not Brandon Sanderson in so many ways.
And yet, I'm thinking more and more that like if I had done Derelict in one shot, that would be, I don't know, a 300,000 word story. So if I had an advance large enough to basically not do anything else but write that story for an entire year, then I could publish it that way. But I don't get those advances. And so basically it's like, if I want to tell this story, I've got to figure out a way to also make money on it at the same time. But in a perfect world, you would have the time to write the entire story before you publish it, before you market it, before you shop it. In a perfect world.
We writers nowadays, basically, we're writing on spec.
Yeah. Always on spec.
Mm-hmm. So you got to accept that that's the way it's going to work. If somebody's writing these big honking doorstops, either A, they're not making any money off of them, they've got another source of income that pays the bills, or B, they are screwed.
If you're traditional published with a big 5 and you write a 300,000 word book, that 300,000 word book may take more than a year and a half to get published. So not only have you spent all that time to write it, but then you have to wait to get paid, because usually the advance is front and back. So they split the advance, and then you're probably never going to see royalties unless you're really, really freaking lucky. So there's a lot of things that go into, figuring out, how you want to actually break up the story. If you want to break up the story, if there's a reason to break up the story. And there's no real hard and fast rule with that. I caution new writers, young writers, I don't even know how to say this, inexperienced writers, I don't know. I recommend that you write something smaller first, then try and go after a 300,000 word book. But that's just from my experience. You might be perfectly fine with a 300,000 word book. I don't know. But it's something to think about. So if I want to try and tell a story this large, how do I get around this massive cut it off in the middle kind of, or, cut it off in a third of the book and put it out a third at a time? How do I get around that?
I say you don't. Boy, that was a short answer.
Would you like to expound?
I'm going to use a series that you hate, and we'll mention the Lord of the Rings, written by Tolkien. Those are 3 monstrous books that are all part of one story that are broken apart, because otherwise you would have this doorstop on your desk that would be unwieldy. It works. It may not be to your taste, but the way they broke it up works. And I don't think that you should be worried about whether or not you're delivering it all in one chunk or you're breaking it up into pieces. As long as you're not breaking it up into abnormally small pieces, I say rock on.
So in other words, if I'm going to try and sell a series, so to speak, and it's only going to be out in 20,000 word chunks, I need to make sure that I let the reader know that ahead of time.
Because they'll get mad if they end up paying for something more than what, or less than what they expected they were paying for.
Now you did, maybe I'm not remembering this correct. Weren't you doing serials at one point?
I considered doing serials. I started off writing serials for free. I published a novel. I published 4 novels under a pen name as serials as I was writing them.
Okay.
But they ended up being completed novels when they were done.
So were those told in how big a chunk?
Chapter by chapter.
Oh my God. So what, 2,000 words a pop?
At the time I was writing bigger chapters. It ended up being 4,000 words, roughly, maybe a little bit more per chapter. And that's what they were getting, 1 a week.
Man, that's as bad as podcasting.
It was, and I don't miss it. Although telling a story in that style is much different than telling a story now. When you're writing serialized, and much like you're doing podcasting, you must end everything on a cliffhanger. You must.
Yeah,
because you got to make them want to come back for the next chapter. And that's still true, but not quite the same thing when coming back from the next chapter means flipping a page as opposed to waiting a week.
Yeah, or waiting 7 or 8 months. It just seems like there's, when you're planning it out, and of course we're, for those of us who pants, you really don't know. I mean, we talked about this before also. I usually have an idea what the ending is going to be. I usually have an image for the ending, and then I figure out.
Lucky.
And I figure out how I'm going to get there. And that's the joy of writing the book, is how the hell do we get to this? And then by the time I get to that point, I'm like, it's changed. It's changed from the original way I saw it.
Yeah.
Which is perfect, which is perfectly fine, because it means that basically, you had that image to shoot for, and you went along, and it's like, oh, well, this is much more cool than what I originally envisioned. And I think that's part of the joy of it, right? Is figuring that kind of stuff out.
Let's use the novel I'm currently writing. When I started writing it, I had the end goal in mind of what was going to happen at the climax of the novel. And I knew some of the events that were going to take place in the middle. Then along comes chapter 2. And I have this idea of how to shake things up. And oh boy, did I shake things up, because at the 60% part of the novel, they're finally leaving for Terra. There's no way that they're going to accomplish the end goal I originally had in mind. That's going to have to be another book. So I have to start searching around as I'm writing my way into the story in the dark, saying, all right, what's going to be the new climax to this story? What different cliffhanger that I didn't envision is going to have to go into place here? Right. And I'm still feeling my way through to that. I have a rough idea of what I think is going to be the climax of this novel. But odds, if history is anything to go by, I've got about a 50-50 chance of being right. And you know what? I love writing like that, because I'm telling myself a story, and as I go along, I go, ooh, wouldn't it be cool if? And that's what happens, because I can make up my own adventure.
Oh, God. This is Choose Your Own Adventure book.
You know what? I saw, this is an aside.
Oh, imagine that, a tangent in this show.
I know. It said, it was one of those pages. It was Choose Your Own Adventure. If you believe that your fate is not decided, turn to page 72. If you believe that fate is decided for you, turn to page 72.
Oops.
No, that was on purpose, and I love it.
God. Would you ever have a narrator talk like that?
We'll have to ask Veronica.
No, it's not what I meant. I meant story narrator. I didn't mean the audio narrator, you doofus.
I would never have an audio narrator talk like that now. Or the narrator in the book. I would never have them do that, because I'm too deep in the characters' heads. There's not a separate narrator. Everything inside there is actually inside the character's head. It's the character.
Have you ever broken the fourth wall?
If I've broken the fourth wall, I'm unaware of it.
Okay. So just in case you're not familiar with the term, the fourth wall is from drama. And the idea is that there are three walls that the characters live in. There's the back of the stage, there's the sides of the stage, and then there's the open part that faces the audience. That is known as the fourth wall. And so if you watch or if you go see if you go see a play like Equus or Amadeus, the protagonists of those stories talk directly to the audience. And then they move directly from doing that into interacting with the other characters. And so when we're talking about breaking the fourth wall, it's when the narrator basically talks to the reader as if it's directly to the reader. Stephen King loves to do this shit. Loves to do it.
What a hack.
Yeah, what a hack. He loves to do it, and it works in many different instances. Sometimes it doesn't. It just kind of depends on the story. And I know there are other writers that do that too. Matt Wallace has done it multiple times in his Slinger series.
I've got his Red Sword series available for reading.
Hang on, you broke up. What'd you say?
Said I've got his Red Sword books that I want to read.
I don't think I know those yet.
I'll have to send you a link. Make sure it's the same Matt Wallace. It might be a different Matt Wallace.
It may very well be a different Matt Wallace. But he does it in a really interesting way. I think there's like, he started a chapter, the very beginning of the book starts with, the sky is blue or whatever. And then there's like a few chapters later, the narrator says, yeah, the sky's still fucking blue. It just kind of goes on with that.
If you want to know something that's more common about breaking the fourth wall, all you have to do is watch Deadpool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Deadpool in the film breaks the fourth wall constantly. And he does that in the comics too. He breaks the fourth wall all the time. There is no separation. In fact, you can make the argument that the audience is just part of Deadpool's delusion. His general delusion.
No, it's not Matt Wallace. It's Michael Wallace. Too bad,
okay.
Matt. I bought somebody else's book thinking it was you, you loser.
Yeah, whatever. Don't talk bad about him. He'll find you.
I only say you're a loser because I am far away from you.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other night because I was listening to Stephen King, and also because I recently read something else. I can't remember what it was now, but they had a couple instances where the narrator broke the fourth wall. And it seems like that is a useful tool in certain instances. I don't think I've ever done it myself, but it could be wrong.
There are times when you can be writing third person and it can be a distant third person where you're not actually residing inside the character's head, but you're residing on their shoulder and have more interaction with the exterior area that perhaps the character is unaware of. And I've never been good at that. I am always close third or first person, so I never break the wall like that.
When I've done the only times I've really done the fourth wall breaking is in the Fiends universe, those stories to a certain degree. But the way I handled it was I had the Fiend telling the story to a victim, or it was epistolary, like in Mama, where he's actually writing a letter to his mother. Done in that way so that it becomes very accessible, very personal, and you can get that you feel like you're that victim or that other person reading this on the other end of it. And so it has more impact. And I think it's a good device. I just didn't want to overuse it with all those stories. But there is a certain immediacy that you achieve when you do something like that. And there's quite a few instances of, epistolary novels that are written exactly that way. If you go back to the 1800s, you'll find a ton of them. Frankenstein immediately leaps to mind, as does Dracula. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. But I was thinking about this because I see it pop up occasionally. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think we've ever really talked about this. Is there any time that you would think about doing that?
No.
Wow.
I live in the characters' heads. Everything about these stories that I write is about the character. If I were to go ahead and step back and address the audience directly, it would feel alien to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it would come across badly to the reader because that's not how I think.
Okay. This is one of the reasons why I, in the black, had AUV5 and I had the lanternfish, and we're following, had the narrator, the disembodied narrator following the fish, getting into the fish's mind, but not like what it was thinking, just basically its instincts, what the instincts were telling it, or what AUV5's programming was doing when it came across this particular issue, what it saw that the humans weren't able to see. And by using I'm not going to call it anthropomorphizing because I wasn't really doing that per se, but having the narrator follow these things down that are just items. They're just objects. They have no brain. They have no sentience to them whatsoever. And having the narrator follow them down these paths is a useful way of doing it. Otherwise, it becomes kind of an info dump where you're talking directly to the reader. If you have a device like that, then you're allowed, or not allowed, you're able to give the information, I think, more organically and less forced than you would otherwise have.
I agree. And I can foresee circumstances where writing something that way might be tempting to me. I don't think I will ever do so, because I want to have a point of view character that's actually a point of view character. That's the way I write the books. I have 3 to 5 actual characters that swap off between things. And if something is going to happen on stage, it needs to happen to them.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I have tried as much as possible to stay within the rules that I learned in college, but I find myself breaking them more and more. Which is what you're supposed to do once you understand the rules. So it's just really interesting because I go back and I think, I should do this, but I'm not gonna. I could do this, but I'm not gonna. And so, I mean, I'm using the same device with the AIs. Although they have distinct personalities. So it kind of, I may be picking nits here, but it's the same kind of device. So I think it's, when you're tackling that fourth wall, and if you want to break it, you need to be very careful how you break it. But I have seen, and I know probably everybody's read a book like this where it breaks out of a chapter, and then you'll have this interlude or a separate chapter damn near an essay, on a specific topic. Sigler does this in his GFL books when he has to give history. It literally is an info dump from an encyclopedia. And that's in The Hitchhiker's Guide is the same way. That becomes part of the novel, and it's necessary at some point for you to get that information because none of the characters will ever talk about it.
One of the ways that I've seen certain things addressed in novels that I can't place the names of who wrote them is actual encyclopedia entries like you were talking about there in between chapters, written by somebody in the far future talking about the events in question that are happening in the story at that point in time and illuminating them in ways that may be different than what everyone is seeing that is taking place. Maybe putting a different spin on them, maybe revealing a few facts that were tangentially unrelated that will help propel the story forward going into the next chapter, but oftentimes just a different spin.
Yeah. I was just thinking the Strain trilogy, the third book opens with a diary entry from Ephraim where he's talking about what happened after the second book ended. Because it takes place, I think the second or the third book takes place like a year and a half or 2 years after the events of the second book. So
but everybody's fine.
Yeah, everybody's fine. So basically, he's playing catch up on writing down, and explains why he's writing this down. in his diary. And in fact, in the third book, there's a lot of diary entries from Ephraim. And so you kind of get an info dump without it being an info dump, because even then it's kind of a story. And I think that that's a really good way to do it. We just do not want to have this, as you know, Bob, and then have have a 50 pages of freaking history about, Tom Bombadil or whatever that guy's name was in Lord of the Rings. It's I think there's a certain level where you have to be really, really careful how you're doing it. Otherwise, you may completely lose the reader and just bore the shit out of them. And I know I've skipped parts of that, of books like that. I've just said, this is bullshit, and just kept going. There's
been a couple of books where I've become disenchanted with one particular plot line. And every time I hit that plot line, I skip forward till I come back to the plot line I care about. I have no idea what happened to the other plot line because I just don't care.
Did we just talk about that?
Pretty much.
Maybe we were talking about that before the show.
It is surprising in the particular case I'm thinking of how much sense just listening to reading one plot made sense internally, and how the other one really didn't impact it that much. The author could have probably cut the other one out and it'd have been all right.
I think that also is another skill of knowing what to drop and when to keep it. And I think that that's another great way beta readers can help you kind of figure that out, is what is, maybe you've written this 300,000 word book, but only 120,000 words are really necessary.
You poor bastard.
I mean, it's entirely possible to get to that point, and where you've built up all this lore and everything else around it, and then it's like, well, this really doesn't add to the book.
You should tell that to the people that wrote the script for Blade Runner 2049.
I am not going to talk to you about this because I haven't seen that film yet.
Allow me to give you just this general impression. It was a long movie that would have benefited from being about 30% shorter.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Of course, I could say, Lord of the Rings would have been a lot better without book 2. But
it would have probably been a lot better book if you cut out about 25-30% of its contents. Sure.
Yeah, I cut 100 pages from the first book, 300 pages from the second book, and about 100 from the fourth or third book. It'd have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm gonna get stoned to death. Right now, there's some fanboys lighting their torches. They're coming after me with pitchforks.
Oh my god! Oh my god! What he said?
What do you say about the trilogy? They always speak of it. You can hear the capital letters. The trilogy. You can always hear it that way. At least I always do, because they always put the emphasis on there. And I know those people. I'm friends with some of those people. So these literary devices that can help you get across that kind of information, I think, are very important to figure out and learn. And obviously, don't ever use them unless it's necessary. And sometimes it's just necessary. I mean, there's probably going to be a point I've never written it, but I think I'm about to write it for Derelict, where we're finally going to get a scene from disembodied point of view of what's coming, and kind of set that up a little bit for when our characters finally encounter it, and build up a little more suspense, where people go, what is that? And nobody knows it's even there yet, because it's fun to do. And it drives your readers insane. I take away in. So, me being Cliff-Hangerin bastard that I am. So, fourth wall, those literary devices where you can get around the info dump problem by being a little bit clever. And obviously the scene and sequel stuff with suspense, and adding that kind of deal to keep the reader turning the page.
The way that you keep the reader turning the page in a chapter by chapter basis is you raise the tension to a tremendous height, and then you give them no closure.
Right.
You just chop it right off with the tension still high, and then you switch scenes to something else, just like we talked earlier. if you're writing the kind of book that only has one point of view character, then you're going to pick up still in the middle of the tension, but then suddenly you'll start trying to solve and counter the problem that they have.
Right.
But you end it when the solution seems insoluble, where it seems like you are going to fall off that cliff.
Or you are going to die.
And then the people have to turn the page because they're like, all right, I'm not quite sure how we get out of this. I think I want to know how we're going to get out of this. And your goal as an author is to have somebody send you a note, say, I hate you. I'm still up. It's 3 a.m. You bastard. I have to be at work.
Yes. Those are the best comments ever. Those are the reviews that you love. Those are the reviews you want to print out and put them on the wall. Those are the ones that, those and the ones where it's like, hey, you lazy son of a bitch, where's book 3 or 4 or whatever. Those are the comments you really absolutely positively want to get.
Mm-hmm.
And because they make you want to write. They make you happy that you're doing what you're doing, and they also make you just want to write that next book. So I think that kind of stuff is very helpful. But there's just a lot of nuance in learning how to do these things, and I think the best way to learn is to read, especially in these cases, is go pick up that book and see how that writer did that book that you enjoyed or you couldn't put down. Just take a moment and look at what they did, and then emulate it. Steal as much as you possibly can.
You can totally steal stuff. If I've read a lot of the Dresden Files, I've read all the books in the Dresden Files series, but I could undoubtedly go back and look at them again and pick up the tricks that he uses to do these sort of things and make my stories better.
Yeah, and then what you'll find out is as you reread them, going, I do this.
That's the scary shit when you look back and go, wait a minute.
I'm already doing this. And I think that just comes from the experience of doing it. So it's just one of those deals where, the best writing class is the books. Writing class can teach you grammar. Writing class can teach you, the basics, nuts and bolts from that standpoint. But reading is where you learn how to tell a story.
Your skills as a writer are much like driving a car up a mountain in the dark. You can see as far ahead of you as the light goes and as far back as the light goes. And that's your bubble of skill at that moment that you're writing the story. You can't see the mountain changing around you in the darkness, but you're getting better. You're getting higher to the mountain. And from book to book, story to story, you will see the changes if you look back and see how far you've come. But you're not going to see it as you're doing it. That's just not how it works.
No, I'm sure Empire of Bones for you has grown from the first book till now, to the latest book.
And I've taken some wrong turns along the way.
Yeah, and even Derelict, I know it's changed a lot from the first book in Derelict, but man, I'd be loath to go back and read Closet Treats right now.
Wow. Yeah, I try not to reread, but I'm gonna have to go back and reread some old stuff because I'm doing the next book in the post-apocalyptic story. And I was going through the proofreading stuff for it. I just got back. I was like, wow, I don't remember that at all. I better make a note. No, I'm going to have to go back and read the damn book because I didn't put a story Bible together. I have no idea what the hell they did.
Yeah, it's because you're a loser. I found myself looking back at Tomb. I had to go back to Tomb to look up some things about what I put in there so I can go, are we actually, oh yeah, I need that now. What was it again?
It's surprising considering the list of open plot stuff that I've got for the Empire of Bones series, 7 books that are out now, and all the various threads and open plot concepts that I could do something with. I am shocked that people haven't sent me letters going, what about this? What about that? What the hell happened here?
Yeah, I'll be taking that up in a future book. I'll be solving that problem later.
But they seem to be enjoying being along for the ride as I'm figuring this out, which is a good thing because I'm stumbling along with them going, what will I do next?
Yeah, what will I do next? So I think that, we basically touched on several topics because we can't keep on topic to save our freaking lives. But I do think that there's just a lot to be learned from going through the process. And maybe you're a writer that just writes standalone books. That's awesome. You don't have to deal with this shit. What you do have to deal with, though, is the same thing as if you were writing those serials. You still have to pay attention to the scene and sequel. You still have to pay attention to making that book a page turner. You still have to pay attention to those things. It doesn't have to be in a series. The same rules apply. It's just with series, you want to do a few more things to keep people reading the next book. So
the goal is always to keep people with you as you move along.
Yeah, that's always the goal.
That's how you build an audience.
Audience building.
I know it's a shocking thing.
How do we audience build?
That's another episode.
That would be all you, dude, because I don't know.
Oh, that pretends that I actually know what I did to have an audience.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
It is. We learn from things that go wrong.
Yes.
When something goes right, we're like,
how do you do that again?
How did that happen?
How do I make that happen again? Yeah, exactly. Well, we beat these horses to death.
Somebody's going to call the ASPCA on us.
Yeah, right. So if you have a comment or a question for us, you can send an email. I can't even talk today. Send an email to show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can tweet me at Paul_E_Cooley. Excuse me. Or you can join the listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group where, man, all the crazy happens. We got a lot of new people signing up and joining up and asking questions, and a lot of beta reader stuff going on. And we'd be damned glad to have you there. And we would be remiss if we didn't mention our wonderful host, Pod Hoster, who makes all 14 bazillion episodes of the Dead Robot Society available for your ear holes. You can check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DRS podcast, where we put up a YouTube video every week so you can see our ugly mugs. Why would you want to see our ugly mugs? What's wrong with you? And you can also support this podcast and keep it free by going to patreon.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help us pay hosting costs. You can help us keep up with equipment costs like buying new hard drives or getting Terry a new HD camera, which he desperately needs so his face doesn't look quite as bad as it does.
You keep telling me this month after month. You say, I'm sending you a new one. I have not seen anything from Amazon, Spud.
Yeah, it'll happen as soon as it goes on sale. And you'll also get access to live shows, early podcast episodes, unedited podcast episodes. And if you're a $10 patron, you get the dubious honor of having your name read aloud at the end of every episode. And that's it's time to read the list of our $10 patrons who love to torture me. And this week they are Caleb, that's not putting in my underpants, James. Nathan, Terry can't fucking spell petty. Drew, I need faster beta readers, Bernardi, don't we all? John Kilgallen, Chris Winder, Isabel, a good attempt but not sufficient, Cooley Cushy. That's 2 episodes ago. You need to update your stuff, Isabel. Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, Jonathan Zarusin, J.R. Handley is cooler than Joe Buckley.
That remains yet to be seen.
And Sue Payman. Thank you once again, our $10 patrons, and thank you to all of our patrons for supporting us. We would not be able to keep doing the show if it weren't for you guys. So again, thank you very much. Terry, did I remember everything?
You did.
I did. Shocking.
It happens every once in a while. Even a stop clock is right twice a day.
Slacker. With that, we will say adios, and we'll talk to you next week.
Adios, muchachos.
Bye-bye.